What's going on, YouTube Metal Complex here, and welcome to episode, I think, 39 of The Knife Guy, whatever the title says, the correct episode. If you are new to this series or you have no idea where you are, you just came out of some weird corner of the internet, I am a knife enthusiast, knife collector, knife user, knife enjoyer of many sorts. I am a knife guy. We are all knife guys and gals in this world. We all go down our own unique paths, but these paths oftentimes intersect. And at these intersections are common experiences. And that's what I like to talk about. I just lay out a whole bunch of stuff that's either mine or some of my generous viewers or stuff that's been sent to me throughout the week or in the last month or so. And I basically just pick stuff up and, flip it and play with it while I talk about this stuff. Generally, it's a little bit more laid back than a lot of the other content on my channel. Yeah, that's what I like to do. So if you are not subscribed and you like daily knife content, feel free to subscribe. Also, you guys are probably used to this. If you're here because you've got the itch, pull down my description, check out my Amazon store, and you can take a look at some very nicely sorted out gear, including my most recommended knives, budget knives, display stuff, maintenance stuff. I mean, I have categories for everything. Seriously, if you've never checked that out, I have put a ton, an astonishing amount of gear in that store. So check that out. Also, if you see people commenting and they have my little Metal Knight helmet logo beside their name, they have joined my membership program, which is very inexpensive and has some cool badges associated with it. So if you want to, it's the join button right beside my subscribe button on my main page for the YouTube channel. Okay, so what are we talking about today? So I had a discussion in the comment section here recently with a gentleman who said something like, X steel, whatever steel, I can't remember what we were talking about, is optimally hardened to, and then he gave a specific Rockwell. And I said, well, I was like, you mean like circumstantially or for you? And he said, no, that's the optimal number. 62 for M390. I know that a lot of people, because of the recent, the heat treat stuff and the Rockwell stuff, people are still a little bit up in arms about getting appropriate Rockwell hardness. But to kind of like piggyback off of what I talked about last week with dumpster fires, the hard truth is that we have about 2% of the knife community completely, really understanding the effect that Rockwell hardness has on a blade and how blade geometry and blade steel and what you're actually using the knife for will affect the outcome. And the other 98% of the community, including myself, doesn't really know 100% about what we're talking about. But a lot of us jumped on and we were like, yeah, that's not right. That's not optimal. What's optimal? That word is used to define things at such precision points, yet it's so it's so loose in terms of like each individual person's what they need it for. So I said you can't say that M390 is. My argument was you can't say that M390 is optimally hardened to 62 because M390 has a range. And the reason that it has a range is because it can be used for a wide variety of different types of tasks. Now, before anybody jumps on me, and I think this was actually something that was brought up in the discussion, I'm not in favor of lower Rockwell. Not at all. 58 is too low for M390. I think even 59 for the most part is something that, depending on who you ask, some makers might say, there are benefits to it. I don't know. I think anything under 60, most people in the knife community are like, that's not where M390 should be. 2% of the people who are saying that actually know what they're talking about. The other 98%, including myself, are just echoing what we've heard because we're not using our knives hard enough, consistently enough to really understand. And in a wide variety, a wide enough range of types of tasks to really know. But that does not mean that our knives should not be heat treated properly, or within the proper range from the factory, right? If I spend $250,000 on a performance car, right, and I don't intend to go race it, that doesn't matter. If it's just going to sit in my garage and all I'm going to do is sit out there in a lawn chair with a six-pack and enjoy it or wax it, that's up to me. I still want that engine to be putting out, not to the ground, but the amount of horsepower that it showed on the window sticker, right? I want it to be tuned properly. I want the materials to be what, that's because that's what I paid for. Doesn't matter what I do for it. That's what I pay for. So anybody, I actually had somebody tell me, that's why Rockwell hardness doesn't matter, because most of us aren't using our knives, to that extreme to find out. It definitely still matters. Definitely. So anyways, optimal. And it got me thinking, that's not really what we're talking about here today, is how I want to define optimal, or what optimal ranges are. Because I know I've probably already started a dumpster fire in my comment section where people are already, look down there, I bet people are already arguing about what optimal hardness is for what steel. Not the topic of the video. The topic of the video today is how we actually come to the conclusion of what optimal means. The truth is when I think about it, I've come to conclusions of optimal. I divide it up. It's a different definition, not only circumstantially, but by different types of knives. But I still have these weird set in stone ideas of optimal. And when I keep asking why, where did I get this? Why? Everybody gets this information from somewhere, right? Not one single person on this planet has so much experience with every single possible material, blade and geometry, and there's no person out there who's come at things from every single angle to be able to define optimal from every single conceivable object, right? Or knife or tool, whatever. So what I'm saying is we all get some of these ideas from somewhere else. Word of mouth, we, read things, whatever. But it's such an important factor when we're choosing what to carry with us, right? It's so important to me that certain aspects, at least, sometimes it's the entire knife. Sometimes I'll be like, what is the most perfect knife that I could possibly carry to this wine tasting event? Like, what? Who cares? But I think about that, right? Or sometimes it's just like, what's the most ideal knife to carry in terms of like the pocket clip tonight, because I really don't want it hanging out. Sometimes it's just certain aspects, right? But the idea of optimal is so, like my idea of a very optimal pocket clip is like on this off-grid Scorpion, because it carries absolutely deep. It's got a lot of material. It's plenty strong. It doesn't have too much of a bill. It's easy to manipulate. It's all function, no frill, and it goes with the knife. I mean, it's an optimal clip. It's low. It's not like drawing attention, right? So that's optimal. Optimal blade shape. Well, to me, you guys have heard me talk about what I consider to be an optimal blade shape. I like flat ground blades. I like blades where there's not a lot in the cutting path. I like them to emphasize a little bit of strength, but I like them to be, a medium thickness on the spine, so that if I really am in a tight spot and I have to do something very non-knife-like with it, then I've got a little bit of durability, but at the same time, it tapers down to a reasonably thin cutting edge, and I can still get that performance. So that's optimal for me. But there are too many people. This episode is largely directed at new people, and I always try to consider, because I get to talking, and if you guys could see me when I do these, any upload, you would be laughing. So I should do an upload of that sometime where I have another camera going on me while I'm doing a review, because I spin around and I wave my hands around. You guys can probably tell because my voice comes in and out, but I want people to, I try to consider new people, and it's really, sometimes I look back at my video and I'm like, wow, what I was talking about and the way I phrased that, the only people who picked that up are veterans to the knife world, right? Anybody who's new got really confused by that. So I want to slow down for a second and say, before anybody, sets my comment section on fire with, heated veteran opinions this way or that way, the real message here is for new people. If you are new to this knife world, and you can go 10 years in this knife enthusiast world, and you can gain all of the info. You can handle as many knives as I have. You can, learn about steels. You can read as much as you want about metallurgy, and you'll still know nothing in the grand scheme of things, because there's too much information out there. Why am I telling you this? Because all too often I hear, or I find that somebody has asked a question in my comments section, an honest question, you know, and they get a nice, you know, people, and at least in my comment section, you know, they don't make fun of people who don't know. You know, we're very welcoming to new people. We want new people, right? It's beneficial for everybody. So they ask a question, and somebody comes in trying to be helpful. Unfortunately, what you get oftentimes is that person's opinion being stated as fact. Let me give you an example. What's Rockwell hardness? Well, Rockwell hardness is, you know, essentially it's a way to measure, you know, how hard the steel is after the heat treat, and the hardness can affect performance of individual composition, and then, you know, there's blade geometry, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I've heard M390 is a good steel. Is that a good steel? Yes. What should be heat treated to? And then that person says optimal hardness is let's say 64. I've heard apparently, I didn't know this, but I've heard that M390 can be hardened. Well, I'm sure any steel can be hardened all the way. I don't know. Here's the evidence that I'm not a professional, right? Because again, this is not what we're talking about. The point is that that person answers that question with a very specific answer. Anything in this knife world that is super specific, other than here's something that's okay to say definitively: knives cut, or knives should cut. Yes, they should, right? But how, like, what's the definition of cut? Some people will say the definition of cut is to be able to split a human hair. Nay, not even split, to explode a human hair under a microscope with an edge that is so fine the hair can't comprehend the connection between the actual cutting edge and the surface of the hair, so it simply explodes into the ether of time, right? No, that's that's not a definition of cut. To me, the definition of cut is a blade is sharp enough to be pushed through material, and then that material is then divided into at least two separate pieces, right? When you get too specific of an answer, there's the correct, I mean, you'll know when somebody's giving you, you know, good information when they give you a range, you know, like, so what would you say the appropriate Rockwell hardness is for S35VN? Well, from what I understand, it's generally, what I see is it's like 59 to 61 Rockwell. I mean, there's going to be, you know, variation in there. And I'm also not a professional. Like, that's how I would answer that question, right? So that person doesn't then proceed through their life thinking that anything that's not that initial answer is less than optimal, because then they're making all of these choices that are based on this one person's opinion, and that person's opinion may not have been based on anything that could be considered substantial, you know, like proof of that being the case, right? Sometimes it is. There are definitely people out there who know way more than me, and they're going to be able to give a much more specific answer for something very, very specific. But it should still be a range, right? Because there is no such thing as the perfect heat treat for every situation, just as there's no such thing as the perfect steel for every situation, the perfect blade length, the perfect blade shape, the perfect handle material. There is no such thing. I tried to discover it for myself. That was the quest for the perfect budget knife series and quest for the perfect folding knife series. And much like anybody else's conclusion to anything like that, it just came down to personal preference based on my limited experiences, right? And not everybody likes the Hinder XM18. Not everybody likes the Civivi Praxis or the Ontario Rat, you know? It's because there are certain things that those knives can't do with the materials that they're made out of, and there are certain things they can do. A lot of people would say, you're stupid for even considering a folding knife at all. You should just carry a fixed blade with you at all times. Carrying a fixed blade solves all of life's problems. I'm being sarcastic, but I'm fairly, you know, the wrong person leaning into the wrong conversation with also the wrong person will get answers like, don't even consider a folding knife. You should just EDC a fixed blade at all times. You know, well, that's not the best advice. You know, so optimal, the word optimal, should also be, should, in my opinion, you know, the way that you know, determine whether or not you're getting good, honest information is if that person uses the word optimal, it should be immediately be followed by a range or more of a buffet of potential answers. Optimally, you're looking at something between here and here. Obviously, it's going to vary depending on the circumstance. That's probably sound advice, right? Probably. But, when it gets really, really specific, optimally, an OTF is exactly 8.1 inches overall and is dagger ground, right? Optimally, the handle material is 6061 T6 and can't be anything else. Why? Nobody's ever said that to me. But if somebody did, I'd be like, wait, no, explain yourself, right? And then, unfortunately, you're going to get a whole bunch of, a big buffet of answers. I'm using the word buffet again, that are just catered towards that person's individual experiences. But if they continue to be, extremely specific, then it's not helpful, right? So I don't know. Again, I'm being super duper preachy, but optimal is defined by the individual based on experience, based on understanding. And it should always be a range, because you cannot predict every conceivable outcome. You can't step back and mathematically assess every possible future to the thing that you're about to do and the tool that you're using as a catalyst to complete said task, right? So no, it can't. There is no exact optimal this. I'm sure somebody will come up with something that's borderline, but I want to caution new people to, we had another episode about this, the self-proclaimed elitists of the knife world. There are a lot of people out there who just want that, that opportunity to have a conversation with somebody who doesn't know better and to present themselves as the all-knowing God of this corner of our community. And that's just not the case, and you have to consider, what's more important, your ego or whether or not this person proceeds with information that's actually going to be useful, So I don't know. I think it is a good idea to consider, what you're about to do with your life that day, and what's optimal for you. I think what it comes down to, for me is when I'm considering optimal, there's a lot of knives that'll work, on a day-to-day basis, like here lately. The knives that I've been carrying are these guys right here. This guy a lot because I just got him, but Para 3, the Guardian Tactical, and the Hogue Ritter. Now there's some pretty extreme differences between these knives, but truthfully, on any given day, I would consider any of these knives optimal. A lot of other people would look at those knives and then look at what I do every day and go, those are completely overkill. That's nowhere close to the true sense of the word optimal. How are you defining optimal? For me, optimal is just feeling prepared. Am I comfortable with the knife that's in my pocket? Do I know how to deploy it? Do I know how to retract it? Does it come in and out of my pocket easily? And most importantly, is it going to cut, right? That's, to me, optimal. But it's, how you define it is entirely up to you. And you're not necessarily wrong. You're only wrong if you get really, really specific with it and then you force your idea of optimal on somebody who doesn't know better. That's when you're wrong. That's just my opinion, though. Guys, I think that's going to be pretty much it for today's episode. Sorry again for being preachy. I don't know why I keep doing these preachy episodes. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. If you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on this Metal Complex logo right here and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.